Welcome, everybody, to the Leaders in Housing Counseling call. Glad you're joining us. We've got a full agenda, as we often do, so we're going to dive right in. Thanks so much, everybody, for being on the call. So we're going to do our legislative updates. We're going to hear from Melody about all the very helpful work that's happening, sometimes frustrating, but we are definitely continuing to move forward. We're going to do a quick thing on disparate impact and housing counseling. We're working with a bunch of the leading civil rights groups to do a briefing call for the housing counseling community. So that will be interesting. I'm just going to announce that the call and who's participating, and then we'll spend some time on the public service loan forgiveness program, something that's dear to all of our hearts and important, but exasperatingly difficult to get people to actually be able to succeed at using this program and getting the benefits. So we have called back our friends at Student Debt Crisis, who are student loan experts, to both tell us what's going on and help us understand what we should be telling our clients and what we should be telling our staff so that we can make this work more effectively. And then we'll spend the rest of the call on the HUD Housing Counseling Certification update. We've got a couple of leaders of people who are really working well to get people to take the test, and Ellie's going to kind of give us an overview of where things are at on the testing and certification around the country. So we're making some progress, and some things are working. So there's lots of good signs here in an area where we have a lot at stake. And we'll make the plug for pictures are still worth 1,000 words, and then the NHRC membership. Our next call will be October 3rd. Stick around for just what we're planning on. We've got some interesting guests that will come on. That's just a week away, and we'll have an intriguing, I think, opportunity to that will be helpful to everybody's work. So with that quick note, let's dive into what's happening in Congress. So Melody.
Thank you, Bruce. And I just want to say to everyone, my apologies. There's a slight error in the agenda. We also have a very short blurb on Sarah Jarique, who is the head of the Office of Housing Counseling over at HUD, and just an update on her letter. But to dive right into legislative updates, it's been very, very busy since Congress has returned, following a very, what they tell us was a long and enjoyable August recess. Most of the action has been in the Senate so far because the Senate Appropriations Committee started their work all of September to pass the fiscal year 2020 appropriations bills, which we were anxiously waiting for the number on the Housing Counseling Assistance Program after working really closely with advocates and practitioners around the country, talking to different offices. We had great calls with South Carolina, with Missouri, with Maine in particular. Just amazing groups all around the country, and we thank you for your work and your efforts on advocacy. After all that work this year, we finally got the figure for housing counseling assistance, which passed the Senate THUD subcommittee as well as the full Senate Appropriations Committee. And the numbers were disappointing. It came out to be $45 million for fiscal year 2020. And unfortunately, we were kind of blindsided by this, honestly, as well as with our partners. We anticipated the figure was going to be $50 million for the fiscal year, and all intelligence we've gathered in the last month and a half, 2 months, have told us the same thing. So obviously, me and Bruce sort of wanted to get more information to see where this figure came from. We had a really good, informative call with both the Senate majority and minority staff inside the Senate THUD subcommittee for appropriations, who was for Collins and Ranking Member Reed. And according to those two staffers, when considering the number for the upcoming fiscal year, they took into account previous fiscal year funds that were not used and thus remaining. And they considered that in their overall calculation for the lower figure. They were very open to receiving any new data ahead of conference, which will be when the House and Senate sort of come together to reconcile the two funding numbers. And NHRC is hoping that we can really hit the ground talking to those who will be part of the fiscal year 2020 conference committee. If you can see on the screen, if you are an advocate or a practitioner in any of those states, please let me know. The Senate will be going into recess, I believe, after the end of today, and they won't be returning until mid-October, but it's very important in the interim that we reach out to all of these offices. We had an excellent call just 2 hours ago, actually, with Chairman Shelby's legislative director. Shelby is the chairman of the full Senate Appropriations, and essentially, he said yes, there's still time to sort of hash out numbers. They understand there's a difference between the House figure, which was $60 million for housing counseling assistance, and we're hoping that we can try and see if we can bump the number up. But if you are a member of any of these states, please let us know. I'll try to walk through the importance of these names. So Senator Shelby is chairman of Senate Appropriations, and Leahy is the ranking member of the full committee, which is really important because they have a lot of sway and final decision in how the overall conference goes. And then obviously you have Senator Collins from Maine and Senator Reid. Senator Collins is the chairwoman of the House THUD subcommittee, and Senator Reid is the ranking member. Over at the House, you have Senator Lowy. I will never get her name right. Lowy. Thank you, Bruce. Senator Lowy from New York, Representative Lowy from New York and Representative Granger. They are respectively the chairwoman and ranking member of the House Appropriations. And then we have great relationships and calls next week with Representative Price, who is chair of the House THUD Appropriations, and his ranking member Diaz-Balart. So these are the top shelf, really important legislators in the upcoming weeks that we absolutely need to make the case to of increasing funding for housing counseling. Understanding now how they came to that decision, we need them to understand that, and Bruce can elaborate on this, that yes, there has been some money that was left on, quote unquote, left on the table, but that's because the actual appropriations process has been so delayed that it's been hard to get that money out. So yes, please reach out to me if you are a member of any of these states, and we'll try to set up conference calls if we can. Senator Shelby's staffer today even told us that he's been slammed with different constituent calls, and we want to be part of that conversation and try to squeeze in some extra dollars for housing counseling if we can.
So just add to that. So while the Senate is in recess right now, you can go to their meetings and raise this issue that they're working on the budget right now, and the idea is for them to talk to THUD leadership in the Appropriations Committee, so Transportation HUD, but THUD is what everybody calls it, or sometimes THUD, and really just say clearly that we really need to go with the Senate, with the House number, which is 60 million, not with the House number 45. And just to explain a little bit more in detail what Melody was walking through, what happened was they looked at the budget with the numbers that were at HUD, and they saw there was $85 million in the HUD Housing Counseling account. So $50 million from the allocation in 2019, and they said, well, there's an extra $35 million. Well, when in fact that is the 2019 monies that have not been spent yet that are going to come up in the cycle, that's going to be the NOFA that has just been graded and is about to be announced, that will probably come out in October. Well, that money is contractually starts with the 2019 federal year, which is October 1, 2018. So we're really at the end of that year, and that money will only actually get spent in the next fiscal year, but it's just a carryover. And we're really trying to explain that to the committee people. They said they had taken that into account, but when we went back to HUD, it was very clearly they hadn't. There is no extra money in the account. And the good news is that it does seem like the committee people that Melody was just talking about seem to understand that that's a possibility, and we have gotten some recognition from the negotiators that this may get sorted out in conference. So we've done poorly in conference last year, so we're pretty worried. I think really making this extra push is very helpful. Shout out to the many people who have already done this, but any chance you've got to talk, especially in the Senate, with people, be very helpful. Um, we have a lot of support in the House, and no problem bringing it up with House members as well. But reaching out to especially Republican senators right now would be very helpful.
And just to jump in, just make sure this is clear. We are here to help you make this case. So if you need assistance with talking points, if you need the emails or contact information of the legislative staff in the states or districts, individual legislative aides, we are happy to help. And please, 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 we are not burdened by your emails. We absolutely want you to reach out to us so we can try and make this happen. I think that's it for my legislative updates.
Great, thanks so much. So quickly, we'll run through a couple points quickly. So the letter to Sarah Jarik is pretty much ready to go. We are closing it out today. So if you've got any staff members you'd like to have, or people who've retired who had a relationship with her, we've gotten a number of retirees to jump in on it. They should really do it today. We're going to try to finish it up and then clean up the list so that we can submit it on Monday to Sarah at HUD, and I'm sure this will be deeply meaningful. And it's a very nice list. We really appreciate. There's well over 300 people that have already signed it, so we've got a nice turnout from the housing counseling community. So thanks so much for that. One thing that's not on the agenda that we just did, which I just want to kind of alert you to interesting things that are going out there. We signed a sign-on letter, and normally we are very strict about pretty much only doing sign-on letters that directly apply to housing counseling activities, and feel like that there's others that will be working on other issues, but we're trying to really focus our energy and time there. And the Americans for Financial Reform have done one on what's called real-time payments. And these are, it's a system to transfer, if you deposit money in an account, to transfer that money quickly. And the Fed is considering running the system themselves rather than having the system that exists today, which is a privately run system, which is good, but maybe not great, and isn't as fast as it could be. And this system would be designed to really make the funds move quickly and be easily available for people. The reason we thought it was important to sign in on this letter is because this could be a way that counseling agencies get their fees. That it would be, be in the same, kind of like a fancy version of Venmo that would be run by the federal government. This is the kind of opportunity we think that would be advantageous to our work. So I'll make a point of posting the letter, and so you can take a look at it. But it's an interesting opportunity that we need to start thinking about in the whole world of dealing with fees. This might be something that might make that work more effectively. We also are working with a number of key civil rights groups on the disparate impact, and how, and quite simply what it is that most of you, I assume, are familiar, but you could say disparate impact is the legal ruling that says that you don't have to explicitly say, oh, I'm not going to loan to Hispanics, or I'm not going to loan to African Americans. You could do things that look on the face as if they're non-discriminatory, but in impact, they in fact have a disparate impact on communities of color, on people with children, a variety of things that might be violations of, in our case, the Fair Housing Act. And this has been the prime mover for being able to effectively change the way that lending practices have happened, or one of the prime movers, certainly in the court system. The rules, the people who are designing these programs are sophisticated enough not to say things that would be so explicit, but in fact, whether intentional or not, and they could be either way, they have the impact of making well, one thing is we have a great example, a frustrating example of the big gap between white home ownership in this country and African American and Latino home ownership. This rule has been one of the key drivers in being able to push against that. Unfortunately, under the Trump administration and with Ben Carson, there's a whole move to very strictly limit disparate impact and make it much more difficult for cases to be made. The cases are hard to be made anyway, so this is making a steep hill even steeper to climb. And what the National Fair Housing Alliance reached out to us about doing something for the housing counseling community, and Unidos US reached out. We've gotten the Urban League and National Capacity on board. So we're going to do a call, not this coming Monday, but Monday in a week, 1 o'clock Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Time. We'll send out the call-in information so that you can all join us. It'll be a webinar like this one, but each of the networks will bring people in, and the idea is for whoever you think in your world should know about this, please spread the word. This is pretty critical stuff. There's a comment period that will come up in the middle of October, and so this is very, very timely. We'll have Jorge Soto kind of lead the call, who's the expert at NAFA, at National Fair Housing Alliance, and we'll look to your participation on that as well. Good. With that, let's pivot quickly to the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program on student loans. We have our old friends Cody Hunanian and Natalia Abrams on from Student Debt Crisis, and they have been they're the ones who led the educational efforts we did a few years ago around student loans. They are really on top of what's going on around the country, and we appreciate the fact that they're going to help us understand what we need to know and how we can make a public service loan option work more for our members and our staff and people in our community. So welcome, Natalia and Cody.
Thank you so much, Bruce. We're happy to be on again. And as Bruce mentioned, my name is Natalia Abrams. I'm here with Cody Hunanian. I'm the Executive Director at Student Debt Crisis, and we're a nonprofit advocacy organization dedicated to reforming the way we pay for higher education in our country. And one of the things we do are these workshops. So you'll get a little taste of what it looks like, going over all of the different federal repayment options, including the public service loan forgiveness, which has been in the news lately. So with that, we'll get started. So I just want to give you a quick snapshot of what's going on. You know, the average student loan debt per year, there's actually multiple numbers out there that range between $30,000 and $37,000. This is the average debt students have. We have 8 million borrowers who are behind on their loans and delinquency leading to end default. We have 45 million student loan borrowers overall that holds $1.6 trillion nationwide. So this is why we aptly named our organization Student Debt Crisis. In addition, we actually have student loan debt. It's at 1.6 trillion now. This chart can't even keep up to date. We see that this economic threat has continued to rise steadily through the years, and it will continue unless we do drastic reform, which is why organizations like us exist and work with many other partners. So continuing on with the snapshot, this is 2/3 of the overall student loan debt, about $1 trillion, is held by women. We know that we have 40% of our senior citizens in default, which, with available repayment programs, it just does not make sense. People need to know more about the information out there. African American women hold the most debt in the country, so we can see that the impacted communities are definitely people of color and low-income earners. And this is also, a parent problem with 3 million Parent Plus loans out there trying to help their kids go to college. So I just want to show you kind of who these federal loan servicers are. You may have heard of Navient, which used to be Sally Mae. That we have on your left-hand side, Fed Loan Servicing, which we kind of have separate because that is the loan servicer that your customers or clients will be dealing with if they are in the public service loan forgiveness program. So when you go into public service loan forgiveness, which we're going to explain shortly, you would have Fed Loan Servicing as your loan servicer, the person that collects the money. And here we have types of federal loans. This is actually the entire student loan portfolio. You know, the reason I think we misnamed it federal loans, as you can see, is federal loans takes up a majority of the portfolio. It's only about 113, a little more billion is private student loans. Almost everyone has a federal student loan, and often people will have both a federal student loan and private student loan. Another interesting point here is that the direct loan program, which is a loan program that was started in 2010, it's also a loan program that is applicable for public service loan forgiveness, is 1.1 trillion of the overall portfolio. That gives us hope in the future, meaning the near future of 2020, the end of 2020, that we can see a better outcome in public service loan forgiveness than we're seeing now. And, you know, so let's get to public service loan forgiveness. You know, this is a really important program that was developed in 2007, and it helps nonprofit employees be able to work in jobs that a lot of us are working in, and also receive maximum benefits with their student loans. It started, as I said, in 2007. And the way this program works is that you need to make 120 on-time payments or 10 years of payment. Does not need to be consecutive, does not need to be the same job. And at the end of the program, your remaining debt or student loan debt would be tax-free. You know, let's go into the next slide just so we can talk a bit about income-driven repayment options, which is a program that exists. There's 5 main programs, and what they do for income-driven repayment programs is base your student loan payment off of your income versus your overall debt amount. For some borrowers, this can take their student loan payment down to 0. When you combine this benefit with public service loan forgiveness, you can get maximum loan benefits for borrowers, which you can take, you know, extended loan programs of 20 or 25 years with income-driven repayment options, take them down to 10 with the public service loan forgiveness option, and also be able to have tax-free forgiven income versus the other programs that are currently taxable. This is only available to nonprofit and government workers, and I'm going to pass it on to Cody to kind of go through more of the basics so you can understand this program, because it's really have been the lack of awareness and education of the program, in our opinion, that's caused so much of the confusion and the high amount of rejections. And with that, I'll pass it off to Cody.
Thank you, Natalia. Thanks everyone for joining us today. My name is Cody Hananian. I'm the program director here at Student Debt Crisis. Just so you know, I am a student loan borrower with student debt myself, so I am in a lot of these programs. The reason I want to just go over the basics of PSLF one more time is because the updates I'm going to share with you are really tied to these complicated qualifying processes. So to qualify for public service loan forgiveness, a borrower has to first have a direct federal loan. And as Natalia showed you, there are other types of federal loans that make up the student debt portfolio. So it's crucial to know if a borrower has a direct loan. The second qualifying factor, of course,
and Cody, while you're saying that, how does somebody know that they have a direct loan? How did they figure that out?
Thank you. So if you've joined one of our workshops in the past, we've gone over this. Borrowers can find out if they have a direct loan by going to studentaid.gov. This is one of the Department of Education's websites. And if you create your account there, you will be able to plug into what is called the National Student Loan Data System. Every federal student loan is in there with all of the information related to what type of loan it is. So we know a lot of counselors who will log into that portal with their clients, of course, to help identify what type of loan they have. And to the same point, if you go into that portal and there is no student loan information, that's a very likely sign that they have a private student loan, which does not qualify for the federal program. Unlike that, the second part, does your employer qualify? For most folks, there isn't a database of qualifying employers. It is based on who your employer is, and what qualifies are government employment on any level, including, just even custodial staff at City Hall. It also includes nonprofit employees that work at 501c3s and other public service careers that are often around medical care, early childhood development, and other things like that. So you can go to studentaid.gov to find out the qualifying employment factors, but there won't be a database to find your company listed. And then the last part is, are you in a qualifying repayment plan? And as Natalia mentioned, borrowers will often enroll in an income-driven repayment plan, which does qualify because that lowers their monthly payments. There also is the 10-year standard plan, which all of us start at when we initially are awarded our student loans. That does qualify, but it's a 10-year repayment schedule, so borrowers will not benefit from public service loan forgiveness if they were to do that. And I'm going to peel out some of the details for you all in just a moment. After a borrower meets all of these requirements, it's really about paperwork at that point. So they're going to, throughout their 10-year repayment cycle, they're going to want to submit an employment certification form, which is also online at the Department of Ed's website. And that's really just documentation throughout their career that they're working for a qualifying employer. It's really to just provide evidence that you're meeting all the factors. And then the last step, of course, is to submit your application. And I'm going to provide some information in a moment about how this has become a bit of a thorn for a lot of borrowers. But just to really nail down the qualifying factors so that I can explain these updates. Again, what loans qualify? All direct loans. So if you visit the National Student Loan Database at studentaid.gov and they have any type of loan other than a direct loan, they do not qualify. Again, I've got the employers here that qualify, all levels of government, 501c3s, and public service careers. And then one last time, I'm just going to repeat, 10-year standard repayment qualifies for this program, but it's not practical because you'll pay off your loans in 10 years anyways, and you won't have anything to forgive. And also income-driven repayment plans qualify. Now, what doesn't qualify has created a lot of the complications I'm about to discuss. First off, a lot of borrowers with older loans have FFEL loans, Federal Family Education Loans, which do not qualify for the program unless consolidated into a new direct loan. As well, the employment can be complicated. Government contractors do not qualify. Union employees that work for the labor unions themselves, and 501c4 nonprofits like Student Debt Crisis are not eligible, unfortunately. And what has become probably the biggest obstacle is the repayment plan. You're going to meet a lot of borrowers who are in an extended repayment plan, a graduated repayment plan, extended graduated repayment, or some sort of deferment or forbearance. These are other options for borrowers with federal loans, but these are options that do not qualify for public service loan forgiveness based on the program's rules. So because all that is confusing, that has created complications for the future of public service loan forgiveness. And I think that's why we're here today, to help educate you all and to help us all defend the program, because it really is something worth seeing through. And so you're probably hearing in the news, we are hearing a lot from our borrowers that they're scared because of reports that 99% of public service loan forgiveness applications have been rejected. So that is the case, but it's not, that doesn't get to the heart of the problem. So for those who applied for public service loan forgiveness in the last 2 years since it's been, you've been able to submit an application, most borrowers for the last 10 years were never told about the repayment programs, the types of loans, and other parts of the qualifications. So we're really seeing this first round of public service loan forgiveness applicants be rejected for small issues they could have resolved early on in their repayment, but that they just frankly were not aware of. Since that, in the last year, Congress has recognized that there's a problem, and they created the temporary expanded public service loan forgiveness, which was supposed to be a fix. But I'm going to explain in just a moment how that's actually created more confusion. And in that program, we're also seeing a 99% application rejection rate. On top of that, if you've joined us before, student loan servicers, as Natalia mentioned, those are the companies that are paid by the government to help us manage our loans. They've failed to inform borrowers of their qualifying factors. They've failed to enroll borrowers in the right repayment programs, and they've generally haven't helped the situation at all. And lastly, the Department of Education themselves have been hindering rollout of forgiveness programs, some in the courts, some in rulemaking. It has not helped the situation that the programs have been hitting roadblocks along the way. So as I mentioned, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, it has a 99% rejection rate at the moment. And that's because most borrowers here were in disqualifying repayment programs, which could have been fixed at very early on in their repayment schedule. We anticipate that, one, more borrowers are going to be made aware of these options because of the work that advocates are doing, and two, more borrowers will be automatically fit into these programs based on their type of loan. So we're expecting these numbers to improve. Also, there's 24% of borrowers who were just missing information. Again, these just go to the application issues. These are mostly borrowers that have been working in public service for the qualifying time and would generally meet the requirements if it just weren't for complicated qualifications and applications. And then in the right corner, you see a good 15% of borrowers had the wrong type of loan. And what that generally tells us is that a large portion of these borrowers are older borrowers that hold older family federal education loans, those FFEL loans. As newer borrowers enter this program that have the newer direct loans that qualify, we expect that to help the numbers improve as well. So because of all those, that negative report from the GOA related to public service loan forgiveness application failures, Congress acted and they created this fix, the temporary extended public service loan forgiveness fix. But the problem is this new program itself is extremely complicated because of the application process. So we see that submittals have been denied greatly because borrowers have to submit an application, be denied, and reapply for this expanded program. It really doesn't make much common sense. On top of that, applications are emailed directly to the loan servicer. This is not like any other federal program in existence. And so we see that the reason that this program isn't working is just that it's created an unbelievable amount of confusion. This program actually has 70% of borrowers who generally wouldn't have qualified in the first place. So we have the PSLF program that has a generation of public servants ready to go, but face application issues. And we have this new fix that really confused a whole nother subset of borrowers who think they now qualify that weren't even really eligible in the first place. So between both of these problems, we have two public service loan forgiveness options that aren't working. And the Government Accountability Office provided these recommendations that have been in line with the kind of work that advocates have been calling for quite a while. So first, clarify the application process. As I mentioned, there's a form for public service loan forgiveness, and there's an email application for the expansion. It doesn't make any sense. Number two, borrowers who are denied in these programs are given very little information, which means they can't resolve the issues and reapply later on. Number three, there isn't currently an appeals process that works for borrowers, so we need to provide an option where borrowers who are denied can seek some sort of recourse. And of course, part of the work that we do here, the Government Accountability Office is recommending an improved outreach. And so I hope that through educating you all, we can be a part of that effort. And so lastly, how do you all play a role in this? We can all help borrowers stay on track by helping to address the cracks in the system that I just identified. So first, understand your clients or borrowers in your network's student loan situation. What type of student loan do they have? Which repayment program are they in? And what are they are they in current repayment status? All of that matters when it comes to enrolling in the right program. Help them submit their employment certification forms and document all of their employment. All of this evidence really is important if you have a problem 10 years down the road. And lastly, to address the application denial information gap, it's really helpful if you can help identify why folks are being denied by the Department of Education, help them fix these situations and reapply. And with that, Melody, please, you can take over the screen again.
Great. And Melody, do we have questions?
We have a few questions. You want to go over them now?
Yeah, let's do that. And I actually just should say that we're going to go over the usual hour. I want to leave time for the certification conversation that may go over, but we won't go more than half an hour over the usual call time.
Okay, great. Thanks, Natalia and Cody. That was really informative. As a millennial burdened by student loan debt, I completely relate to everything, and I think it was really helpful to get the information. And many of my peers would say the same thing. First question. Someone's son is a member of the police department in Texas. Would being a member of the police department qualify for public service forgiveness?
Yes, that would count. So any local, state, or federal, government job will count. A police officer absolutely counts.
Great, thank you. If a borrower has not submitted their ECS form annually, can they catch up on that form or have the employer confirm their employment period?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So if you're just finding out about public service loan forgiveness, but you meet the other criteria, you have the correct loan, you're in the correct repayment program, and you have the correct job, you could be years into it, and this might be your lucky day. So you do want to catch up on that and make sure you get all of your information and people signing off on the forms. But, we have spoken with many borrowers that sometimes find out that they're 6 years into public service loan forgiveness.
Thank you. How long must a borrower be in qualifying repayment before submitting?
So when it comes to the, just to clarify, when it comes to the employment certification forms, borrowers can submit those all throughout their repayment period, just as documentation. When it comes to actually submitting the formal public service loan forgiveness application, that you're going to submit after you've completed your 120th qualifying payment. And I do have to note, it's actually interesting as well. Once you've made that 120th payment, feel free to submit your application, but you actually do need to stay employed at a qualifying nonprofit or government employment while your application is being processed. So until you've been completely approved, do not change any of your qualifying repayment plans or your employment.
Thank you.
And to answer the question,
sorry.
So the original question, you can immediately, when you start repaying your student loans, which is 6 months after graduation, most people get an administrative deferment when they graduate, so they don't start paying for 6 months. We're getting close to that around November, December for graduates. We would suggest immediately enrolling in the best income-driven repayment program that fits your needs, and then submitting the employee certification form you can do that right away, and then Fed Loan will become your servicer, which will probably be different than what borrowers are assigned to at first.
Thank you. If payments were made outside of the qualifying loan programs, outside of qualifying loan programs are made, is there any way to have it reviewed to add them?
No, so the payments, you need to make 120 payments within the direct loan program and the qualifying repayment program. And right now there is no appeals process set in place to apply anything made outside of that program. But that's different than if you haven't submitted your employer certification form.
Thank you. Is there an appeal when submitting employment verification and is told denied due to the wrong type? Okay. Can you appeal it, the decision, when you submit employment verification and you're denied due to the wrong type of loans and client only has direct loans?
Yeah, so that was actually part of the Government Accountability Office's recommendations. Right now, borrowers who receive denial don't have an actual formal structure to have it completely reviewed. We have to recommend that borrowers, one, try to resubmit, because we are hearing that borrowers are successful just by resubmitting their paperwork. And two, we have to send borrowers to other consumer complaint channels at the Department of Ed and at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to submit complaints, but there's very little resolution process. So hopefully that is something that we can help craft in the future, is a more formal appeals process.
Thank you. This one was from someone from Texas. Here in Texas, we have client borrowers who were impacted by several major storm events or in the various forbearance programs. It sounds like we need to train these borrowers into getting some type of income-driven loan repayment program. What are your thoughts? Have you encountered people who have been impacted by storms? How does that affect their student loan payments?
Yeah, so we have actually been following action to help those hurt by many of the recent natural disasters. There has been action, but I want to kind of flag what our thoughts are here. So most of the action by the Department of Ed has been to encourage borrowers to enroll or apply for a deferment or forbearance, which essentially puts a pause on their payments. That can be very appealing to borrowers, particularly those who are, facing a crisis, because it makes it affordable. However, there are so many borrowers who are going to be facing long-term income issues, and it may be beyond just the storm. It may be something they're already on thin ice, and an income-driven repayment plan is a better option. And it's a better option, one, because it doesn't have a clock. Deferment and forbearance are limited options. And two, income-driven repayment plans qualify for public service loan forgiveness. So if you are faced with a crisis and you choose deferment or forbearance over an affordable income-driven repayment plan, all of the time spent in that deferment or forbearance doesn't qualify towards the 120 payments needed for public service loan forgiveness. So there are some directives from the Department of Ed related to deferment or forbearance, but the person asked the question, they're smart to think of IDR as a much safer option for borrowers with long-term distress.
Thank you. One of our attendees said that she made 7 years of student loan payments when her student loan payments changed to federal loans, but they cannot find the previous 7 years worth of payments. Is there a way to discover past payments, or do you have to enroll in student loan forgiveness for the payments to count?
Yeah, so my first thought is to go to, of course, the student loan database at studentaid.gov. Not only does that document the type of loans you have, it documents all of the different programs you've enrolled and switched over time. It time-stamped, all of that. So you can get a sense of your payments and different payment plans there. But there are instances, of course, of borrowers who maybe have switched servicers and their information is literally lost. Those are tough situations. You can email us at info@studentdebtcrisis.org, and we can try to point you in the right direction. It often includes submitting a complaint with the Department of Ed Ombudsman's office. But again, the resolution is maybe not as quick or as comprehensive as we would wish. So feel free to reach out to us, but please start by at least looking at the database to see if you can find the information saved there.
Thank you. If someone with a student loan works for a nonprofit that they started, could that nonprofit still count as an eligible employer?
Yeah, we get this question every time. So technically, yes, you can start your own nonprofit, but you need to be, you have to W-2 yourself or W-9. You have to be a full-time employee and be paying yourself whatever the minimum wage is or the, laws in your state. So, I know I'm in California that if I have a salaried worker, I need to pay them essentially over $50,000 a year. So I have to take that into account. So it's just something to note. You need to be paying yourself properly, and then it would count.
Thank you. If someone makes payments for 3 years and then receives a forbearance, but continues to make payments thereafter, does that disqualify you from the loan forgiveness program?
Great question. So you just pause the period of time. If you're in a forbearance, those payments would not count, but you could resume payments when you are out of the forbearance. It's, the important to note, the only thing that essentially would restart a clock would be a loan consolidation. So, if the first step to qualify for public service loan forgiveness for people with older loans would be to consolidate their FS, federal family education loans, into direct loans. That type of action would cause a reset.
Thank you. If you made payments under the standard repayment plan and then entered an IBR, does that make the 120 months start over?
No. So as long as you're not consolidating, and it's actually a great question because that's where the standard repayment works. A lot of us will start out on it. So that time would technically count if we're working in a nonprofit job. And then if you go into a repayment program, then that would still count as long as you're not changing or consolidating your loan. And so sometimes people go in and out of repayment programs and they reset back to the standard, and that's why the standard counts as one of the repayment programs.
Thank you. If someone has worked for multiple 501c3 agencies, are they able to get employment certifications retroactively?
Yeah, so first off, you don't have to have one singular qualifying employer. So multiple qualifying employers, over the years works. But to address that particular point, you can submit the employment certification form retroactively. So if you are now working at one nonprofit, but there was a business you worked for many years ago that would qualify, you can contact that employer to have them fill out this form with you, and you can submit that. It's also important to note that the employment certification form isn't necessarily mandatory, and if you missed any of those forms throughout the years, it's not necessarily a disqualifier. But what it does is it helps you just document all of your qualifying employment throughout the years, because 10 years of documentation to provide to the federal government just isn't really the best ideal situation. So this form helps you keep track and then helps you provide the documentation necessary when you go to fill out, of course, the final mandatory application.
Thank you. That leads into our next question. Is there a way you can check how many qualifying loan payments you made so far?
Yeah, it's in the database. And then also when you're part of FedLoan as your servicer, you will get annual reports that will let you know how many qualifying payments, but it is in the studentaid.gov database. And just something important to note, because I'm through the questions, this is for full-time employees only, so you need to work 30 plus hours. That's kind of why I brought up salary in the previous question. People can combine 2 jobs to create the 30 hours, but this is where we get into some of those mistakes where you must submit both of those applications at the exact same time. So if you're working 2 jobs to create your 30 plus hours of nonprofit or government work per week, then you would have to submit both forms simultaneously. People that didn't got denied. There was, lots of little things that created this huge 99% denial rate.
Thank you. Here's an interesting question, at least to me. Can a borrower pay in advance to hit the 120 payments to go under 10 years and qualify for forgiveness? For example, paying the minimum payment twice in a month to make it 5 years instead of 10 years.
No, so actually not only can you not do that, it can create a snowball effect that has become a huge problem. So first off, you have to make 120 qualifying payments, and it has to be over 120 months. So you can't, double up your time by making 2 payments and catch up. So that's just one thing. But those who are interested in public service loan forgiveness should note this weird quirk in the system that's created a huge problem. And the advocates are kind of working this out at the moment. But if you have if you're interested in public service loan forgiveness, you must pay your exact amount that is owed for your payment. And that could be your full loan amount or your full bill if you're on the 10-year standard, or it could be lower to $0 if you're in an income-driven repayment plan. But if you pay any penny, literally any penny more than that, it is this domino effect where none of the payments after that are considered qualifying payments. And so we've heard from borrowers who out of good faith have added, a couple of bucks here and a couple of bucks there to try to get ahead of their loans, and have actually made all of their qualifying payments after that not qualified. It's unbelievably unfair.
Work.
It's beyond interesting. It's wrong, but it's just disgusting. But this is something that's part of this terrible rollout of the program, and we're hearing about these things now. So just really important to note.
Okay, that's really interesting. I'm definitely going to tell my friends that, who are all doctors and have $600,000 of student loan debt. Our next question is, if your income-driven repayment is $0 for 10 years, do you still qualify for public student loan forgiveness?
Yes, absolutely. That's why, we have that slide of income-based or income-driven repayment programs plus public service loan forgiveness is maximum benefits. So, for example, if you're making, under 30,000 or around 30,000, it's quite possible you have a $0 payment, remain in that job for 10 years. Everything gets forgiven tax-free. So the one problem I will say that we have found, or the biggest problem with income-driven repayment programs, besides their length of time, is that they don't take into account cost of living. So, we're here based in LA, folks based in DC, New York, Atlanta, our salaries, sometimes we're not going to get that good benefit on the income-driven repayment program.
Thank you. Is there an income limit for IDR? For example, can someone earn so much that they no longer qualify?
Yeah. So it's all income-driven repayment programs, except for we haven't gone into them, but except for revised pay-as-you-earn, require partial financial hardship. So it varies because it also takes into account your family size. So, but it's anywhere between 70, 100, 110. It does depend. You graduate out of the program. Again, that's why the standard can work for this program. You can be in an IDR program. You continue to make more money. You do graduate out of it, but there will still be a loan savings after 10 years because you probably won't be able to finish paying it off in a 10-year time. So you can graduate out of it, though.
Thank you. I'm just going to do 2 more questions. We're really excited by, there's only 1, 2, 3 left. Let me see if I can get through this. Do the AmeriCorps Education Awards towards your student loan payments count as qualifying payments?
Could you repeat that? Was that a grant? I'm not sure I'm familiar with that.
So AmeriCorps is a federal
Oh,
program.
AmeriCorps.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. You know what? I actually think AmeriCorps has some unique programs, but I will need to confirm exactly the details. Whoever that question is, if you don't mind emailing me or us at info@studentdebtcrisis.org, we can point you to the information from the Department of Ed to make sure it's accurate.
Okay. We have a few more questions, but I'm just very cognizant of time. So what I think we'll do is that when we send out the email at the end of this call, when we provide the information about the recording, which will be on our media web library and our website, we'll provide the emails of the speakers so that if you have additional questions, we could be happy to coordinate you answering them.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, thanks.
Excellent. Thank you so much. This was great. So as I said earlier, we're going to go and go for an extra half hour on the call so that we can spend time on the certification question. But this was a really valuable conversation. So let's go quickly to the HUD Housing Counseling certification. So Ellie, give us the overview. And I know we have Nadine Lang from the Atlanta Legal Aid and Claudia Randall from Community Development Network of Maryland to talk about what they're learning as well.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, so some of you may have seen that recently there was an update from HUD about the number of housing counseling agencies and housing counselors that are actually certified, and we are at 30% right now. So that is a bit of an increase. We were at 25, and that equates to 530 agencies, and then on the slide here, you can see the top 10 states with the most HUD certified counselors. So we still have a long way to go, but we are making some headway. I do know that as a result of us putting this out there, we got several responses from people who said that they had just taken the test or they are about to take the test. So I think that it's, at this point that people are really working toward getting the exam taken and done. So I just want to encourage everybody to be really thinking about this and preparing for it. And I am going to put in the chat box the link to another study group that is being hosted by Housing Action Illinois. So they did one in August, and we've heard from a few people that it was a very helpful program. I think that there was about 65 counselors who participated. It's 3 sessions, I think it's 6 sessions actually of an hour and a half each session. And the next one is happening in December, and that link that I just put in the chat box will bring you to the place where you can register for that. The other thing that people have been, a couple of people have talked about as being very helpful is there is a Facebook page called HUD Certification. It's a group, and so I encourage housing counselors to go on there. It's very supportive. There's really great information. There's a lot of chatting and conversation in there about what works and what doesn't work. And then the last thing I'll say, the other really helpful thing that a few groups have talked to us about is the session that we did in July. And that was a pretty lengthy session, and it, went over many different tips and tricks for how to study for the exam and how to pass the exam. So I encourage people to go to our website and go to the media tab and find, I believe it was July 11th that we did that, and spend some time looking at that. So with that said, we wanted to update you on one of the things that we did talk about on that group, which was the study buddy groups. We put it out there for housing counselors who might want to take part in these groups. We got around 140 of housing counselors who replied, and we put together 28 study groups. When I say we, I mean Ibijoke Akindawale from NCRC, and I worked the list and put together these groups and then informed all of the groups. And so what I want to do is bring out now Nadine Lang. So Melody, if you go to the next slide. Nadine Lang, who is one of the team, next, it's Nadine is next. So there you go.
Thank you.
Nadine is a certified housing counselor with the Law Project at Atlanta Legal Aid Society. And even though she already passed the exam, she agreed to be a team leader. And so I invited her to come on to talk about how their study group is working and what she is hearing and seeing as what works and what doesn't work for counselors. So Nadine, go ahead.
Kelly, thank you so much. I have about 6 people in this study group, and then another study buddy group came out of this study buddy group. And so what we're finding is that, well, first of all, we had, when we came together, no one had scheduled a test except one person. And so I thought that was important that they work toward a date. And so we got dates down for everybody, and basically it's at the end of December. But I heard them over and over say about 3 things that kept them from actually taking the test. They were a little nervous about the test. Number one, it really hasn't been a company's priority. Now, I'm not saying it hasn't been every company's priority, but I'm saying that we are hearing from counselors that say, well, you know, I have to study at home, or I have to study after I get off work. And they really need dedicated, uninterrupted time in the office. So I created a letter to directors and actually sent it to a particular director who agreed. He never thought about a reasonable amount of uninterrupted time at the workplace for his housing counselor to study. He wanted to know why and what would be the benefits of that. That's number one. And we were also hearing that counselors were saying that they were getting nervous about the test because everybody that took the test was saying how hard it was. And so I encourage those that have taken the test and passed the test. We're not a league of extraordinary housing counselors. We are certified housing counselors, and that is good. But we don't want to paint a picture that this test is so difficult that only just a small group of people can pass. It is a complicated test. It's a comprehensive test, but it's a test that can be passed by a trained housing counselor. And then, of course, the third thing that I would encourage everyone, and I saw as I started the study group, a study buddy group, is that you have to take personal ownership. Studying a couple of hours each week for at least 3 to 4 consecutive weeks may not be enough for you as a housing counselor. You may need a little more time. So take the time outside of the company's time to study. But I will say this, the study buddy group has helped almost everybody in our particular group, and I hear it all the time where they're sending me notes saying, hey, Nadine, I appreciate it, because basically what we are cheerleaders for each other. We're encouraging that housing counselor that hasn't taken the test. You can do it. And in most cases, I'm actually sending tests out, practice tests out. I'm just taking information from the modules and from NeighborWorks training and from HUD trainings and sending it out and asking them to do it, to take these tests, and we'll talk about it at our next session. And we have a session every week for 1 hour. And believe it or not, people are saying, I didn't know I knew this. Oh, wow. This was a refresher for me. So it's just a way of encouraging our housing counselors to take the test and encouraging their companies to buy into helping them take that test. Thank you.
Thanks, Nadine. Somebody did ask if they would be able to get a copy of the letter that you mentioned.
Yes. As a matter of fact, I sent it to my CEO, Executive Director Steve Gottlieb, and it basically he endorsed it and everything. It's just telling them to join my executive director. So Ellie, can I send it to you? Can I forward the letter to you?
Yes.
And
Yep. Do that, and if you're okay with it, I'll just send it out to our leaders and housing counseling list.
Sounds good.
Okay. Great. All right. So we also brought on one of our previous presenters, Claudia Wilson Randall. She's the Associate Director at Community Development Network of Maryland. She was on our call back in July and talked about the study groups that they were doing in Maryland and about the tips and tricks that they had come up with to help people pass the exam. So I wanted to bring Claudia back on to talk a little bit more about what she knows about what are some of the issues that she sees in the process of preparing for passing the exam. So Claudia.
Okay, I just want to echo, I think everything that Nadine pointed out in her remarks are things that I'm going to also point out. I would just, my advice, and sort of, I'm going to just go through a couple of notes about what we learned when we did this. And I think it just follows Nadine's points beautifully. So the first thing I think that's really important is you have to create a positive, you can do it culture around the test. I know that, it's like for a long time, people have been saying the test is coming, the test is coming, the test is coming, and now it's finally here. And now it's like, oh, this isn't, I think people were hoping that the test would go away, but it's not going to go away, folks. And I feel that, HUD put a lot of money, time, and effort into this. So they're not going to decide to walk away from it after they've put a lot of time and money into it and investing in a professional test taking. The other thing that we saw in Maryland is that people were taking the neighbor work study classes and then not scheduling the exam. So I think, Nadine, your point about having people schedule the exam, because then you're working towards something. And the other piece of advice that we learned is that passive studying doesn't work. People who say, yeah, we're going to study at our desk during work hours, and we're going to also answer the phone and, diffuse problems in a housing counseling office, that's not going to work for this exam. It's much more involved than that. I think the test, remember, was also created because there was a need to create a single standard nationwide for housing counseling. So be aware of that. I mean, I would just say take this seriously. You're not going to be able to just, study, in between clients or something like that. That's not going to work. I've also been talking to people about when they take the test, and if they don't pass, you're going to get a score. And so one of the things that we noticed as a pattern is that many people who are not passing, you need 500 to pass, but a lot of people were getting 450, 470, 492. So they were pretty close to passing. So that means they were missing, maybe 3 or 4 questions in some cases. So I really encourage those people not to be completely devastated, but to simply go back and take the test again after 2 or 3 days of studying. Don't become completely demoralized and say, that this is somehow a reflection on your, life's work, but really get up again, brush yourself off, get up and take that test again soon after, because otherwise you've just sunk a lot of time into this. So the other thing I would just say is that people on your staff are different, and this studying, it's a custom experience. So some people are visual learners, some people are, they need to write everything down. Some people learn better when they're under, when they have a deadline and they're stressed, and they kind of learn what's, right in front of them. Some people learn from teaching others. And I've heard from one person who they actually taught their spouse about teaching about the housing counseling, and they kind of went through all their notes out loud with them, and that really helped to focus them, that they were actually teaching somebody something. And so these are sort of known adult principles of teaching and learning. Please put those to work. And I would also say that in the counseling committee, we also work with clients that have different learning styles. So you need to put that to work on yourself and on your staff. Not everybody is going to need the same amount of time. Not everybody is going to use that time the same way. Other strategies for success that I would just say is focus on the knowledge check and not the practice exam. The new quiz that was put out, I believe it was in June 2019 by HUD, is actually quite good. It gives you a score. We had been advising people throughout 2019 not to focus on the practice exam. That doesn't mean you shouldn't look at it. I just wouldn't focus your time there. The exam much more closely mirrors the knowledge checks and not the practice exam. Be aware also of test anxiety. I think that's real. Practice breathing, practice stress reduction and calming techniques, practice using an on-screen calculator, and really practice, if you're taking it at an off-site place that you've never been to, maybe you go to the off-site place before you're going to take the exam. That will help to reduce the stress of the exam. The other thing is, there are some areas that I think especially in the last 5 years, housing counseling haven't been focused on, which is some counselors may not have been focusing on tenancy or fair housing, but don't overly focus on one area or the other, because it's a randomized exam. You won't always get the same questions, and if you focus on just one area that you think you don't know, that may really hurt you in the end. Look at all of everything, all of the test materials, and try to focus on the areas, obviously, that you may need more time with, but remember, it's a comprehensive exam. The other thing is, you're gonna have to memorize the ratios. There's no way around it. We're sorry. I think I tell people, put it on your refrigerator, put it on your computer so you see it every day. Again, these are known ways that people study things. This is why in a elementary school classroom, most elementary school classrooms actually have things on the walls, and it helps you retain it. So you're going to have to memorize VA, conventional, FHA, whatever you need to do that and see that every day. The other thing is, use the devices that you have. Many people have iPads. You can put study materials on your phone, on your iPad, or on your Nook, but use those things that you have to help you study. The other thing is, I would just say overall, find ways to have fun and study the material at the same time. You can make up songs. You can tape yourself reading modules and play it back in your car. You can move your body. There's 20 steps, not 20. I think there's 12 steps in the foreclosure crisis process that HUD has outlined. There are actually steps and in sequence that you have to remember. Okay, so maybe you make steps and you actually step on those. Find a way to make it fun. It does not have to be pure misery. I think find the whole coaching sessions that we've been, find a friend or a colleague to hold you accountable for your studying. I've been doing this pretty informally with a few of our counselors across the state, which is every Wednesday I call a couple of people and say, hey, how's it going? Have you scheduled that exam yet? Are you studying? What's going on? I think that helps move people forward in important ways, and also helps just to create that positive culture about taking the exam. So I'm just want to say a couple of things is, please don't lose sight of the big picture on this. It's an exam. You will get through it. You can do it. The other piece that I really try to emphasize with our network is your clients need you. I mean, this is at a time where minority home ownership is is equal to what it was in 1968. I know some of you weren't even born in 1968, but our clients need, our low and moderate income borrowers need what we do. The wealth gap is growing. Many demographics still dream of home ownership and wealth building. So just don't forget that. Remember that all the work you do with your clients and in the communities and throughout your state is important. So yeah, I think I'm going to stop there.
Well, thanks, Claudia. So there is one question. You kind of addressed this a little bit, Claudia, but Claudia or Nadine, either of you can answer this, but somebody asked about the calculation portion of the test and what are some ways that that people might overcome the fear of that aspect of the test. And Claudia, you mentioned like posting things around, but any other suggestions?
I put my phone on mute. So I would just suggest there have been some very good, go to the Facebook page. I think some of the counselors were wrestling with this, is just practicing the calculation and practicing the type of questions that you're going to get. Practice using an on-screen calculator. I've been working with folks on that because I think that many people were a little bit, they don't use their on-screen calculator often. So we worked through some examples with the on-screen calculator in order to do that.
And Nadine, do you have any thoughts that come to mind about ways to overcome that fear?
I agree with Claudia. You do need to work with that on-screen calculator. But here's the thing you've got to do. You've got to learn those ratios. You've got to learn how, just practice. And some things just will take practice.
Well, great. Those are all of our questions. I think the final thing I want to say about the exam that I keep hearing pretty repeatedly from people who have had success is take the test right after you complete a training. Study is big, and get support from your colleagues. So with that, I hand it back over to you, Bruce.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Claudia and Nadine, especially. It's great to hear. So quickly, we'll close out with the picture's worth 1,000 words, still true. So we need your pictures that we can use. We'll put them on Facebook. We also want to use these in promoting housing counseling. So please, you'll get a little recognition for your organization. So, of course, we'd like you to join NHRC if you're not a member already, and we still have I got an email today about, do we still have the discount on the credit reports from a longtime member? And yes, we do. So that's still available, and the main thing is you're supporting the advocacy. Next week, we're going to have our next one on October 3rd, and it's going to be very interesting. So we're going to have two segments beyond our usual. So one is we have Kim Johnson from the Low Income Housing Coalition. She's going to be talking about homelessness and the Trump administration claims on how they're going to address homelessness and it was triggered by things in California and especially in Los Angeles. It's a really insightful commentary about what people's rights that they have, what government can do, but what the homeless rights have. And she's deeply knowledgeable. It's just a fascinating talk. It'll be 15 minutes of the call, but it's worth your time. It makes us really think about the issues at hand, and especially what the appropriate role of government is. We will spend the rest of the call on a new-ish program that Gabe Del Rio and Lupe Hernandez have been working on. It's the Homeownership Council of America. And what they're doing is working on a variety of different mechanisms that can be ways that housing counseling programs can up their game by providing a broader set of services in the origination process or the loan process, which generate income. And the money can be quite substantial, and they're talking and thinking about how more of us can do some parts of the program. So this is beyond what we've talked about in previous calls. It's a much more ambitious and far-reaching analysis. So we'll spend the rest of the call on that, and that call may go a little bit over time as just this one did. So that's our call for today. We'll send out the registration for next week's call soon, and look forward to having you and talking with you next week. Thanks, everybody. And if you have a chance to talk to a House member or senator in the next couple of weeks, please plug housing counseling funding and how we need to get the figure as close to 60 million as we can. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye.